Hi friends, Andrew Carruthers here, Education Director for Sam Villa. We've got a great tutorial coming up for you on the blunt bob, this very classic shape. We're going to talk a lot about how do you look at head shape and how do you use a blending shear to get a really nice crisp line that has a soft finish to it. So let's get started. We're going to jump right into the sectioning. Especially on these really accurate lined haircuts, we want to make sure that our sectioning is set up as strongly as we possibly can make it. Before we do the sectioning, we wet her down and we added a cutting lotion. We like the One United because it stays light in the hair, but it also helps to keep the hair smooth and soft while we're going through our sectioning. So let's talk about the sectioning because this is maybe a little unique to some of you. We call this foundational breakdown. And what we found is that when we break down the head in this way, we see the really strong natural changes in the head shape. So the first thing that we're going to find is the thing that we call the vertical transition. This is the transition vertically from the sides and back of the head to the top of the head. So it's changing direction vertically. That's why we call it the transition. We find that by placing a comb vertically on the side of the head, and right where the comb lifts off, which we can find that point by taking the pointer finger and placing it right in between the comb and the head, that is the beginning of that vertical transition. So as we come back, we hit this point in the crown where the crown starts to dip down, which again, you can find that by placing the comb in vertically parallel with the wall. Take your pointer finger, just kind of tuck it between the comb and the head, right where it pinches. You're going to see that's where the dip of the crown is. So you want to follow that natural shape of the crown. Don't make it dip down if the guest in your chair doesn't dip down. Just follow the natural head shape. The next one that you're going to notice is this really strong transition here. This is what we call the horizontal transition. The horizontal transition is probably the most important discovery for us lately because it really tells us a lot more about how the hair, especially below the vertical transition, hangs on the head. Previously, we would have taken it to the top of the ear, but when we went to the top of the ear, we noticed that we were treating this hair right behind the ear as part of the back of our haircut. And as you can see by the sectioning, this area of the hair still makes up more of the profile of the haircut. So we started this section right there at the horizontal transition, and look how small the actual back of the head is. It's a very slim area. So we want to part right there at the horizontal transition. Little trick to find that is take a hand flat across the side, flat across the back, right where your fingertips meet. That's going to give you a good point to look for that transition in the head shape. All these little things are good for you until you start to really recognize these transitions. Once you start to recognize the transitions, you're not going to spend so much time searching for them with all these little tricks. Your eyes will just go naturally to them. So the first section that we're going to take is a horizontal section across the nape area. The size of this section will be directly determined by the density of the guest's hair. If they have finer hair, what do you think we will do? Yeah, hopefully all of you said we're going to take a slightly larger section. We want a large enough section that if we put a contrasting colored comb behind the hair, we can just barely see the comb through the hair. That way we know we have enough hair to create a nice strong line here without it being so much hair that it's going to be difficult to control. We do want to keep the hair damp throughout this practice, so we'll take the continuous mist bottle, just give it a light mist. We don't want the hair to be soaking wet, we just want it to be lightly damp. For this portion of the haircut, we are going to use the Streamline Series 6 1/4 inch shear. This is a great length for cutting really blunt, long lines because there's plenty of blade length for us to make one pass. We don't necessarily need a huge pair of shears though, because we are going to try and stay parallel to the natural head shape, and we're going to be very conscious of that. We're going to use the Artist Series handle comb. We found we like using the handle comb just because it gives us a nice horizontal surface to look at as we're cutting. These really blunt, strong bobs that we're cutting recently are very parallel to the ground. We don't necessarily see them really long towards the front or the opposite direction. Primarily, they're fairly parallel to the ground, so that's why the horizontal section. We'll take the comb in parallel with this section, bring it down to a horizontal position. If they have a strong curvature here in the center of the back, then we definitely want to follow that curvature with the comb. If it's fairly parallel, side to side, we can probably get away with making one cut. We're going to go ahead and do two, so we'll go just to the left of center here, make sure that we're parallel with the natural head shape. We're going to put the solid or the blade underneath and then cut parallel to this line. So you can see how important the comb is to brace the hair, because the comb is giving us a visual to carry this line down to the bottom. Now we'll step to the opposite side and again cut that line. Now I'm standing in a bit of an odd spot to be able to do this because I'm trying to make it so that you can see. At home or in the salon, when you're cutting this, your body's going to be right in front of your work. So put your body parallel with the shape of the head. And what that is going to do is it's going to make it very easy for you to stand right in front of your section and make sure that your sections are very horizontal. And I'm doing that to cross-check my work a little bit. Now, you can see that section starts to get into the side of the head. And again, previously, we would have treated this little corner here as part of the back of the haircut. And for a lot of you, this is where you get that little buildup of weight right behind the ear because you're treating this as part of the back of the haircut. So you're drawing it back to the sections towards the back, which we call that over-direction in hairdressing terms. And over-direction creates what in the opposite direction? Weight and length too. So by treating this as more the side of the head, it teaches us, okay, I've got to take a big step here. I've really got to change my body position so that I can get parallel with the head shape, so that as I'm cutting this, I'm not dragging it to the back and creating length behind the ear. The other benefit of using the comb here is that we're not going to overdo our tension. The other thing that gets us into trouble right here is the hairline starts to change. And at that change in the hairline, we'll start to see some jumps and bumps in the texture of the hair. It's going to want to jump around and move on us. So if we come right here, place our fingers in, create tons of tension, and drag it down, and here we'll just do it below. Watch this line as I release my fingers. What did it do? It jumped up, right? So by bracing in the comb, it helps us to not get such a significant jump when the hair releases. Now we're getting a little bit of a jump because the hair's been parted long enough that it's wanting to stay in the partings. So dampen it down and just make sure that you keep that similar moisture content the entire way through. So let's go to our next section. We'll again start here in the back. We'll drop down a similar amount of hair. Again, it really depends on the density of the hair. And don't forget that the density of hair can change throughout the cut. So don't just arbitrarily pick a section size. Change your section size based on the density of hair. So as I drop this down, we'll take a look and see if that's the right amount of hair, which it is. And I am using a black comb. She's got kind of medium level hair, so really on this particular mannequin head, this is our Lydia mannequin head, named after Sam's mom. The Lydia head has more of a medium level of color, so you can really use the black or the white comb on Lydia. Okay, so now as we go into the next section, we're going to make a little change. One thing that we're noticing is that even with the blunt bobs, the perimeter edge is a little softer. So instead of using the blunt shear for the rest of the haircut, we're now going to use the blending shear. Now, the reason for the blunt cut on the bottom is it's easier to work with, honestly, around the neckline to get that blade of the shear underneath there without disrupting your elevation. Once you get one section done, then it's easier to get the blade in to use blending shear. So now, we'll again brace with the teeth of the comb. There's my guide from underneath. And as I cut, I'm just going to allow the shear to slide back and forth as I cut. This is our signature series reversible blending shear. This has a tight tooth spacing to it, so it's perfect for this kind of cutting. Now, of course, you can do it with your blending shear that you have. If you don't have this particular blending shear, you're just going to make a few more cuts as you go through the hair. Now, what's great about this is it gives us this very, very soft edge, but still a bluntness to it. So, using the blending shear to cut that line kind of gets work done faster for us. It keeps us from having to come back in and re-soften and re-texturize those lines. Now, here's the thing. As I go forward, I want to make sure, again, I have enough hair. And because of the density on the sides, we're good. So we'll take that section. Make sure you keep those sections horizontal. Keep the hair dampened down. We don't want the hair sopping wet. We just want it damp enough to control. And a little bit of product in there helps to keep that control. So we'll take the handle comb, place it in our horizontal section. As we drape down, keep our elevation low, make sure we're not over directing forward, we're not over directing back, just right down into natural fall. We're going to reach up and we're just going to give the hair a little tap up here. And what that does is make sure that even the little bit of tension that is created with the fine teeth of the comb isn't going to disrupt the natural movement, especially if they have a little larger surface here, bigger ears. Even if they have that little bit of tension release should be enough so that it doesn't pop after it dries. Now, you can really start to see how important that section is, because at this point right here, that horizontal transition, now the line is going to travel straight forward. And as long as we keep that comb parallel with the floor and watch this line develop all the way from front to back, give it a little tension release, we should have a really nice crisp line in the end. And I'm going to face her towards me just for a moment so I can cross-check that, make sure I'm even. It's looking pretty good. Not bad for cutting from the side. So all we're going to do is we're going to pop over to the other side and complete the section on the opposite side. Once you've finished both sides, step in front of her, just give her a little cross check, make sure that you're balanced side to side. Don't get too crazy with perfectly measuring each little piece, because we want this to look symmetrical, but a lot of times what happens is we come up and we grab pieces of hair and we try and measure two pieces, and if those two pieces aren't exactly the same point on the head, we can sometimes see things that aren't really there. So just be a little careful as you're cross-checking. So let's take down this center back. And we won't take anything more above the vertical transition, and you'll see why in just a moment. This section on the sides is going to be identical to our previously cut section, so I'm just going to go ahead and cut through that. right, with this last section here, one thing we want to pay attention to is the direction of the teeth of the blending shear. When we're cutting, the teeth of the blending shear are facing in towards the head. This is for two reasons. You can actually affect the direction of ends of the hair with the teeth of the shear. So we want the hair to make sure that it's staying in. That way, when we blow dry it, we're gonna have a really nice bevel to these edges. So if the teeth were out, it would actually influence the hair to want to pop out a little bit. So we want to keep those teeth facing inward. Now that all the sides and the back are finished, let's head to the top. Take the clip out, and what you're going to want to do here is take some time to really get this hair into natural falling position, or how she naturally wears it. So that's one of two things, right? If your guest gets out of the shower and they just kind of shake out their head or something to get their hair to go where they want it to, then great. We want true natural falling position. If they really have a specific part that they always wear it to and they place that part in, hand them the comb and honestly, let them do it. Let them show you exactly where that part lives, because it's so important at this stage of the haircut that the hair is laying exactly where it wants to lay once it's blow dried into place. So if they wear it in a little bit different place, then that's where you want to blow dry it. So we're gonna just take that time and make sure we get everything into natural fall or blow dry position. Even if they have a little growth pattern here in the crown area, a little swirl, which the Lydia mannequin heads do actually have a little swirl implanted in them for a more realistic practice. Then you let that cowlick sit how it wants to sit. And that's going to give you a little bit of a buffer so that as you blow dry, if they can't get this crown perfect, it's still going to look really good. Once you have it into blow dry position, don't bring your comb to the top of the head anymore, because our natural tendency would be to come up here and start combing. And if I comb this straight down, it's going to take this hair that really wants to live over here, and it's going to drag it towards the back. And then when it gets blow dried over to the side, it's going to be too short, and you're going to have a little short point. So make sure it's in natural falling position. The comb stays below the vertical transition, and then everything else stays the same. So I get that solid blade under the hair, teeth are facing in, real gentle with the tension, and we just marry to our previous cutting line. So we're just going to complete this around both sides. One thing you'll notice is we've actually left out this section right at the front. And that's because this is a really important section. If I continue to work around the head and I comb this into place here and then cut, that length when she pulls it back to wear it is going to get short on me. So we're going to place it into position of where she's going to wear it, which is going to be here on the side. You can go to the corner of the eye right here, right at the edge of the eyebrow. And we'll place the comb in, hold the hair. The nice thing is because the blending shears tend to hold the hair still, they don't push it, the hair is not going to slide around too much on you. It's going to stay put. Now the nice thing is that's left you that little bit of length to keep that corner strong. And we'll do that on the opposite side as well. Before we blow dry, let's go ahead and put a little bit more product in. This is Redken's Pillow Proof Primer. This is going to help us to get some control over the hair really gently, but it's also going to speed up blow drying time, and it's also going to help with heat protection. Even our blow dryer doesn't get crazy hot or worried about burning the hair, but a little bit of heat protection never hurt anyone. So we're going to mist that through. So we'll start with the Signature Series paddle brush, because this is going to give us the least amount of tension and allow the most airflow to go through. As we start to need the polishing power, then we'll switch to the Artist Series paddle brush. The little bit of boar hair bristle that's inside of this brush helps with tension and polish. Then we'll finish with the Artist Series Spiral Thermal, because this is going to really get the hair to polish out nicely with all that boar hair bristle and the heat of the thermal core. We're going to use the Artist Series blow dryer with the focused heat nozzle on it. This is going to make sure we get the maximum amount of polish out of the hair. And we're just going to start with a very basic wrap dry technique, and then you'll notice we'll take that round brush and just polish the ends a bit. We're going to keep this blow dry really, really simple. Once you've completed the blow dry, now it's time to get into the refinement. First thing we want to address is the perimeter itself, because that is the focal point of this type of haircut. One thing that you'll notice is we cut in natural head position. So her head was straight up and down when we cut. Many of you like to cut with the head tilted down, and there's good reason for it. Number one, comfort, but number two, if you cut with the head tilted forward, it creates a little bit of a natural undercut. Now, for everything that we do, there's a benefit and a compromise. With her head tilted forward, the compromise that you're going to make is that you lose the visual of flat with the floor. So we suggest that you do cut in natural head position first. Then what you're going to notice is, especially after you blow dry, you're going to have this stuff right along the neckline that's going to want to pop out. Once you're done blow drying, then we would suggest go ahead and have her tilt her head forward. And what you'll notice is that you'll have this stuff that'll pop out from underneath. Then you can take the shear, and we would suggest point cut that hair to blend it off and make that hairline look really nice, because that's one of the features of these types of blunt bobs, is this really beautiful, really flawless hairline. Once you've refined it in that position really well, move it around a little bit. So going off to the side, going off to the side, and see if anything pops out and gets ugly again. And if it does, trim that off. Because what we want is something where when she moves her head around, she can really move it in almost any head position and have a really beautiful line down there. So we also want to tilt it off to the side, because even on the side, you'll notice there's that little bit of stuff popping out from underneath there. A little bit of debris hanging out underneath our perfect line. So we'll clean that up. And just look for any other discrepancies. Now, I am going to own up to one little problem in this haircut, and I believe I know what happened. So if you look, we have a really nice strong line from front to back, and then that little piece that I showed you to over direct, I think what happened is as I cut this little corner, I think my shear angle was actually tilted up, because you can see it wants to pop up on me just a little bit there in the front. So yeah, whatever, I'm not perfect. So we'll check out the opposite side, make sure we don't have any more hanger outers under here, just point cut those. And then the last step in your refinement should be balancing weight and density. The one area that we almost always know that we're going to have some excess weight is through the nape area, because we have so much more hair there. So we're going to just take a horizontal section to parallel with the top of the ear, We'll take our dry cut-in clip. This is great for this because it has that little urethane band in there, so we're not going to create creases. We're again going to come in with the reversible blending shear. We're going to stay very parallel with the hair. Cut and remove some hair. Cut, remove some hair. Cut, remove some hair. These shears take a decent amount of hair away with each cut, so you're not going to have to go back in a bunch of times. What that's going to do is help to collapse this neckline a bit, so when this hair drops back over it, we still have a really strong, solid, blunt feel to everything, but it's also going to have a soft line and a nice head shape to it. So let's repeat that on the opposite side. We'll take a horizontal section right there along the neckline. We'll pin that forward with the dry sectioning clip so that we don't create a crease in there. The blending shear goes in with the teeth facing in towards the head, very parallel with the hair. We're just going to take a few cuts to reduce some weight and density on that nape area. And we'll let the top drop down. Final step is to apply a little product. So we're going to grab some Triple Dry 15. We like the Triple Dry 15 right now because we're not seeing a ton of super high shine finishes. We're still seeing a little bit more of a natural finish to things. So we can use this as a finishing spray without getting a lot of hairspray look. So we cut that nice soft edge, so we'll actually use our fingers more so than the comb to place that hair into place. Place it into place. We'll place it into place. And then just a light mist from very far away. Use the distance of the can to tell you at least the distance you want to have so that you don't get a spot of product. This has a little triple diffuser in the nozzle, which is really cool, which definitely helps with getting a nice mist with everything. I'm going to turn her towards me so I can see the front here. The mannequin heads have a strong downward growth pattern there in the front. That's so that we can cut fringes on them. So that front hairline always wants to drop forward a little bit. You probably have some guests in your clientele that do that same thing. That's a lot of times where we'll suggest, let's not battle with it. Let's just cut a fringe into it. And by the way, if you want to learn a really incredible blunt fringe that would pair very well with the blunt bob, you can check our YouTube channel. And you'll notice Jesse Linares has a video on there for you guys that teaches you how to do a really beautiful blunt bob. We'll put a link in the comments too for you. So let's just do a quick review here. First thing we want to do is get her into the natural head shape, parted into the natural head shape. We do that through a process called foundational breakdown. Parting off the vertical transition, many of you call this the parietal ridge. So that transition from the side to the top of the head. Then the next transition that we feel so important, if you really look at the profile of this haircut, look, it's all of this. It's not just from the top of the ear forward. So if we didn't treat this as part of the side of our haircut, if we treated it towards the back, we're gonna have an imbalance in the shape. Then we take a 1-inch horizontal section across the center back, actually a little bit larger than 1 inch, just because the hair density allows us to. Drop that down. The first one, we're just going to use a blunt shear because you're not necessarily going to see a lot of that hair from underneath, and it works better along the skin. It's easier to do that on a real neckline because the skin gives, but on the mannequins, the blunt shear works great too. On the following sections, as we drop those down, that's when we switched over to the reversible blending shear to cut the line. And what that does is it gives us that appearance of the bluntness and the heaviness, but with a very soft edge, and hopefully you can see that in the camera. Bring that into the sides and just be really cautious as you get into the higher sections to brace this hair around the face, off of the face where she's actually going to wear it. And if you notice, as I pull that back, you'll see more balance side to side. When you get to the top, make sure you're working in natural fall because that's how she's going to wear it. If you force it into a parting that it's not going to be worn in, most likely when you go into this little refinement phase at the end, you're going to notice there's a lot of hairs hanging past your perimeter line that are going to need some reworking. So, we hope you enjoyed this blunt bob tutorial. We wanted to keep it quick and simple for you guys. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave them in the comments. We love to hear from you guys. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Andrew Carruthers, Education Director for Sandia.